And we are joined now by Republican Senator Marco Rubio, who is a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Senator Rubio, good morning on a busy morning. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Let me get your take on this strike. And we've heard it called symbolic. We've heard it called limited. You used to rail against pinprick strikes. Is this a pinprick strike?
I don't believe it is, and that's one of the reasons why I think it was the right thing to do. First of all, it had a clear military objective, and that is to significantly degrade a very specific airfield, actually the one that's most active right now in that conflict for the Assad regime, and the airfield in Syria, which was the one that was used to conduct the chemical attack 2 days ago. It appears they've achieved that objective. In the process of destroying and degrading that airfield, they also took out aircraft that were used in that mission. And so for those reasons, I think it had a clear objective, and they put the appropriate resources in order to achieve that. And let's also remember, this strike was legal. It is in furtherance of an agreement that the United States and Russia are supposed to be the guarantors of, an agreement in 2013 and 14 that Syria would remove all of its chemical weapons. That obviously was not the case. They're in violation of it. And number three, it was in our national security interest. There are hundreds of American troops embedded in the region, including in Syria, working as advisors and the like, and they are in danger of potentially being exposed to sarin gas if it in fact is being deployed in the future.
Senator, you talk about that deal that was supposed to result in the Assad regime losing all of its chemical weapons. That deal was brokered by the Russians, and the administration, at least the president, has been incredibly silent when it comes to Russia's role and complicity in this situation. What would you like to hear President Trump say this morning about the Russians and their involvement?
Well, first of all, I don't think they were silent last night, because that airfield that was struck was also an airfield the Russians have flown out of. So in addition to degrading Assad's capability, it also degraded the Russian capability, or the Putin capability,
but didn't they
to launch
get a heads
attacks
up?
from there.
But Senator Rubio, didn't the Russians get a heads up that this was coming and move some of their equipment out of there?
No, I think they moved some of their people. And again, that is a normal mill-to-mill contact. We're not at war with Russia. And the objective of the mission was not to kill Russians or even to kill Syrian troops. The objective of the mission was to destroy a facility and to degrade it substantially. That was the purpose. And think about it this way. If they had not gotten the heads up, as is customary when you're not at war with someone, and they had not gotten the heads up and Russians had been killed, then we would have a very different situation this morning. If in fact Russians were killed at this point, they'll have no one to blame but themselves.
All right, so take us forward here, Senator. After this strike, it's very unlikely that Assad stops his assault on his own people, maybe not with chemical weapons, but continuing, as you just heard Jack Jacobs say, with more conventional weapons. So where does this lead us? What is the next step? What options are left open for the Trump administration?
Well, first of all, I think this morning Bashar al-Assad and Vladimir Putin and Iran and others have a very different cost-benefit analysis. Right now, they could act with impunity up until last night and not fear that they knew what the risks were of doing that, and that was international condemnation, but that's it. Now I think they're kind of in a position where they have to wonder, well, what will happen if we actually do this? So I do think it has the potential to impact behavior. Second, I do believe that we need to now move forward through a combination of diplomacy and, quite frankly, the support of groups on the ground, particularly non-jihadist Sunni groups, to create alternatives to the Assad regime. I think we need to now reach out to our partners in the Sunni world, Saudi Arabia and the UAE and the Turks, who I think have a real interest in what happens in northern Syria,
Senator,
to become part of a solution here that I think begins to create an alternative to Assad in Syria.
Sorry to interrupt. We're short on time, and I do want to ask you, were you personally surprised to see how quickly President Trump seemed to have a change of heart on this particular issue? I mean, as recently as last week, you had members of his administration saying it was basically political reality that Assad would stay. Then we had this chemical attack. And back in 2013, in very similar circumstances, it was Trump who said, don't go into Syria. It's not in America's national interest. What changed?
Well, first of all, we don't have, as you said, a lot of time to go through the differences, but this is not similar to 2013 for a lot of reasons. Assad was actually losing the war in 13, and if we had supported some of the elements on the ground that were not jihadists, he may have very well fallen. The Russians got involved in 15, changed the dynamic. We also didn't have American troops in Syria in 2013. We do now, and that gives us a national security interest as well. And as far as change of heart, I think the president was deeply and personally impacted. There is a difference between being a candidate and being the president, and seeing those that weight on your shoulders. And I believe that it weighed on him as a person, as a human being. I think you saw that in his statement last night. I thought you saw that the day before in the press conference with the King of Jordan.
Senator Marco Rubio.
Thank you very much. We're, of course, going to have a lot more on the airstrikes. What happens next? Our coverage continues through the morning, but let's get our first check of the weather.
All right, guys.